is a mysterious and invisible line between two islands in Indonesia that no animal, bird, or fish has ever crossed. This line runs between the islands of Bali and Lombok and extends to the end of the Malay Islands. This line cannot be detected by any sonar or satellite technology. Moreover, the animals on each side of the barrier differ completely from one another. There is only a distance of 35 kilometers between Bali and Lombok, but somehow the environment between these two islands is opposite. The animals and birds found in Bali do not travel to Lombok, and the wildlife in Lombok does not travel to Bali. Thus, these two islands are two opposite worlds, divided by some mysterious power, and no one but humans have been able to cross this invisible barrier. This barrier is infamously known as the Wallace Line, and it was named after the British explorer Alfred Russel Wallace 250 years ago. How was the Wallace Line discovered? Wallace explored the Malay Archipelago for 8 years, from 1854 to 1862. He collected biological specimens for his research and sale, writing many scientific articles on mostly zoological subjects along the way. He reached Bali and studied the different species there in detail. Afterward, Wallace traveled to Lombok Island. He was shocked to discover that the fauna here was completely different from what he encountered in Bali. Bali had animals like tigers, rhinos, and elephants, animals native to Asia and Africa. On the other hand, Lombok had koalas, monitor lizards, and kangaroos, Australian wildlife. This would be the beginning of establishing his famous Wallace Line. Again, the most interesting realization here is that Bali and Lombok are only 35 kilometers apart. So what could be the reason behind such a drastic difference? It was like an invisible barrier dividing the worlds between each island. Unfortunately, Alfred Wallace fell ill from malaria. Fortunately, however, this gave him lots of free time to think over his discovery. He hypothesized that when the Earth's continents were joined together as Pangaea 360 million years ago, the animals of Bali and Lombok could freely travel among the two regions. However, after the collapse of the Ice Age, Pangaea was flooded and broken, and the islands of Lombok and Bali were separated, eventually isolating the animals in their territories. Furthermore, the birds on each of these islands are characterized as non-migratory. Therefore, they are not suited for long-distance flights. On the other hand, powerful deep-sea currents separated aquatic life. Overall, it seemed as if marine and land wildlife were miles apart, despite having a distance of only 35 kilometers. Sadly, the science community did not recognize Wallace's work due to not being an influential scientist. When he wrote to Charles Darwin, Darwin did not credit Wallace for sharing his work, even though his theory of evolution bore striking semblance to Wallace's research. Additionally, his theory accurately explains Earth's tectonic plate movement, but scientists only accepted this hypothesis as true after Wallace's passing. They found that the powerful deep-sea currents were due to the subconvection caused by magma under the ocean floor. The cycle of cold and hot currents imposed this natural barrier, forcing the aquatic life apart. Were plate tectonic proven during Wallace's lifetime, things may have been different for him, and perhaps he would have received the recognition